One thing I can assure you, if I didn't make it this year, I wasn't going to cry. I can 100% assure you that. It has to be Rudy. I mean, the man cried on national television when he did make the All-Star team. Thank God he's made the next three.
Is Rudy Gobert the star center of the Timberwolves? He's been crushing it on defense, making his team practically unbeatable. People are saying he's a shoe-in to win Defensive Player of the Year for the 4th time. That's as many as legendary players like Dikembe Mutombo and Ben Wallace. Rudy's fellow players are calling him the most overrated player in the whole league. What's going on here? Tim McMahon from ESPN was on the ESPN Daily podcast on Tuesday. He talked about why it seems like other athletes don't like Gobert. McMahon has studied Gobert's career a lot, and he says he knows him well. Gobert has been famously criticized by people like Golden State's Draymond Green and even Hall of Famers like Shaq. Despite all the criticism, Gobert keeps winning awards and leading top-tier defenses. McMahon believes that the dislike for the 31-year-old center started because of an incident in February 2019. In that incident, Gobert broke down in tears in front of the media after not being picked for an All-Star game. Since then, Green has taken several shots at Gobert for what happened. The tension between Gobert and Green boiled over earlier this season. The Warriors forward put the Wolves center in a headlock during a scuffle. Green got 5-game suspension for it, and Gobert got fined. I didn't think that was some kind of ultimate triumph of psychology. McMahon thinks that Rudy has had to learn and kind of train himself not to be so sensitive to what people are saying. And we are talking about people from random dorks on Twitter that are in his mentions to Draymond Green, who is obviously one of the most high-profile players in the league who has multiple media platforms. Rudy had to train himself not to let that affect him. While some NBA players made fun of him for not being picked for the All-Star game, most of the criticism against Gobert came during the COVID pandemic in 2020. During the early days of the pandemic, there was a famous incident involving Gobert. He jokingly touched all of the local beat reporters' microphones after a press conference. 2 days later, Gobert tested positive for COVID, and the league quickly shut down its season, becoming the first American sports league to do so. It was a joke that did not land. It was a joke that he should not have made, but nobody really understood what COVID was at that time. They just knew, okay, this is weird. McMahon continued. In his goofy way, Rudy was trying to say to the Salt Lake reporters that he sees on a daily basis it was an awkward attempt to show solidarity with the jazz beat core. It was obviously a bad joke, and then when he became the first player to test positive for COVID, completely blew up in his face. After the incident, $500,000 were donated by Gobert to people affected by COVID. On the court, Gobert has achieved a lot. He's been named All-NBA 4 times, All-Defensive Team 6 times, Rebound Champion, Block Champion, and a 3-time All-Star. But that's all during the regular season. The big challenge for Gobert seems to be the playoffs, where he's never made it past the second round. Gobert's Wolves made it to the playoffs as the number 3 seed and are currently leading 1-0 over the Suns in the first round of the Western Conference playoffs. After a bit of shaky start in Minnesota, Gobert took a cue from Aaron Rodgers and went on a 64-hour darkness retreat. McMahon says that Gobert is highly enthusiastic about the benefits of the darkness retreat and that the Frenchman is at more peace than he's ever been. He also added that he thinks a lot of that is because of his personal growth, his journey, his maturity. He's going to be a father for the first time with a baby on the way due next month. Also, this is the best situation he's ever been in. On a professional level, the transition to the Timberwolves wasn't smooth, but the vibe around the Timberwolves this year has been really positive, and they have accepted Rudy, quirks, and all. To be honest, for the last few years in Utah, it was all drama. There's no friction anymore. Honestly, the Karl Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert buddy cop bromance thing is pretty interesting, because these guys didn't like each other before. Frankly, they didn't like each other year because they were competing for all NBA spots against each other. They've struck up a friendship. Like I said, I think Rudy is in the happiest place he's been in the NBA career, certainly since he's been a prominent NBA player, said McMahon. It marked another rough outing for Defensive Players of the Year, Gobert, who struggled against MVP Nikola Jokic, who racked up 40 points, 13 assists, and 7 rebounds on the night. Green, who was filling in for Charles Barkley on TNT's Inside the NBA alongside Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, and fellow replacement Vince Carter, wasn't keen on Gobert's liberal use of "we."
And the big Frenchman is sitting on that podium, speaking his native language. We need to do this. You need to get a stop. It ain't we. Karl Anthony Towns is actually doing a pretty good job when he's on Joker. It's you, my man, that's getting cooked.
According to his peers, Minnesota Timberwolves center Rudy Gobert is considered the most overrated player in the NBA. The soon-to-be 4-time Defensive Player of the Year isn't bothered by this label. In their eyes, he is more like the odd guy from the France that's winning a lot of awards, and it can bother people, Gobert told Tim McMahon of ESPN. It's true that this man impacted the games in a very unique way. It's maybe not as cool or not as flashy as some other guys, so it's sometimes harder for them to respect that. Even Gobert thinks that he just mostly misunderstood, and one reason he thinks that happened is because he might have triggered a lot of these guys. The Athletic released a poll of NBA players who voted Gobert as the league's most overrated player on Monday. Ironically, the same poll also overwhelmingly touted Gobert as the league's Defensive Player of the Year. According to his peers, it seems like Gobert falls short on the offensive end of the floor. He's mostly known for dunking and doesn't show much skill in the paint or outside shooting. In today's game, where many big men can shoot threes, Gobert's lack of versatility is noticeable. Gobert's teams have also struggled to advance deep in the playoffs. Opposing teams have regularly limited his effectiveness, protecting the rim by putting him in an array of pick and rolls, beating him off the dribble on switches, and shooting over him when he plays drop coverage. While Gobert is a regular season menace over 82 games, teams tend to find ways to better exploit him when given time to scheme. NBA Today radio host Justin Turman called Draymond Green a hysterical hypocrite for criticizing this year's Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert, for not defending MVP Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference semifinal between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. What do you think about this gem of a player? Share your views with us in the comments below. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. Until next time, see you all.